Now to Brazil, where the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Simon Stiell, says the world cannot afford to slow down climate action. He insists the Paris Agreement is yielding results, but calls for even faster progress to protect people and the planet. Esther Omokwariola reports.
Speaking during the press conference at the ongoing climate summit in Berlin, Simon Stiell says COP30 marks another major step forward in the global climate journey, one built on progress made under the Paris Agreement. According to him, for the first time, global emissions are bending downward, with new national commitments projected to cut emissions by 12% by 2035.
Every fraction of a degree of heating avoided will save millions of lives and billions of dollars in climate damage. And these cuts will get deeper and deeper as we move faster and faster. And make no mistake, humanity is still in this fight.
But amid the progress, Stiell warns that global heating continues to cause devastation worldwide. He urged nations to act faster, describing climate action as the greatest economic opportunity of this century.
Global heating is already dealing some devastating blows in every country. Just look at the super typhoons blasting the Philippines and Vietnam, the brutality of Hurricane Melissa, crushing lives and businesses. The costs of delay are skyrocketing for every nation. And that's why we're here. We must accelerate in the Amazon. This is my fourth.
He also stressed that climate justice means ensuring every nation and every person benefits from clean energy and sustainable growth. Esther Omokwariola, TBC News.
Joining me live on the news to speak more on the current climate crisis and global action at the United Nations Climate Change Conference taking place in Berlin, Brazil, is a climate change activist, Olamide Martins. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Olamide. Now we heard protesters stormed the venue of the conference and disrupted the night session of the summit there in Brazil. Can you give us more insight as to why these protests happened?
Unfortunately, thanks for having me. Unfortunately, again, we have to eat to the streets to protest. Year in, year out, we do this, having to force conversation on government, particularly on our state. So the protest became necessary because conversations, again, continue to exclude people who should be beneficiaries of this conversation. And there is this general saying that you don't plan anything for me without me. Apparently, conversations and conclusions of tests are happening, and people who are in the front line, indigenous people, are being excluded. This is not the first time that we experienced this. So yesterday, indigenous people in their numbers head onto the streets, carry placards, reminding negotiators and deal breakers that this is not all about the state, but the people who are often denied the benefit of expression. Placards including "Our nation is not for sale," "Make me polluter pay," "Kick them out," "Let this be people's cup," were some of the conversation that we were forcing on the people. So apparently, for us not to have a repeat of the conclusion that we only promote business interests and sideline people's interests, we have to eat to the streets to demand justice, because justice in its essence is now being defined by those who are perpetrating this crisis as well. But you can't get justice from those who are even the one behind this mess. So we have to eat to the streets in our numbers, and of course to force dialogue on those who should demand, whom we should demand responsibility for, and have them, yield to our concerns.
Let's talk about the Paris Agreement. COP30 is being described as a turning point built on the progress of the Paris Agreement 10 years ago. Do you think the current pace of global action truly matches the scale of the climate crisis?
Well, it's unfortunate. Paris Agreement of 2015, this is 2025. We are still saying the same song, singing the same song, saying the same narrative over and over again. Just last year, the World Meteorological Organization revealed that We exceeded the 1.5 degrees centigrade feared in the Paris Agreement. We are still having on our shores continued expansion of fossil fuel exploration. We are still having people driving exploitation, even along the mining corridors. We are still having investment, massive investment in fossil fuel businesses across the shores, particularly in the global south and in Nigeria and in Africa specifically. So I think basically we are not making progress, I must say, because we are dealing with corporate entities from the global north who have their footprint in the global south here, who would rather want to maintain the status quo at the expense of people in the frontline community. So it's unfortunate that rather than us getting below the curve as regards 1.5 degrees centigrade, we seem to be exceeding the curve as feared in the Paris Agreement, and of course as detailed in the IPCC report of 2025. So it's a fear for us collectively. And this is why you see people, indigenous community, people in the frontline community saying, come on, we are the one that understands the reality. It is our shared reality. People in convenience, people in what we refer to as borrowed comfort cannot determine the pace, at which conversation should yield without having us in this conversation.
I'll ask you this last question, and this has to do with, many activists believe commitment made at the global summit often don't translate to action on the ground. How can COP30 be different?
Well, the likes of America, who is the biggest corporate, is not on ground, and it's quite unfortunate. Let me also say that conclusions of COPs are not legally binding; they are moral, even though they are international instruments that try to force responsibility. And of course, voices of us from the frontline community demanding commensurate compensation. So it is purely on moral. I will continue to say that the evidences of infraction that we are now providing in their numbers will force some reasoning on the state and particularly on the global north in such a way that it's not going to be business as usual. We are tired of being beggarly approaching this conversation, on the basis of charity. Africa is the continent of the future, and it is high time for our leaders to begin to, negotiate from the perspective of strength as against what they want it to be at the moment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martins, for your thoughts on the media news. Thank you.